Welcome back to Locally Grown In, a podcast on a mission to help entrepreneurs growing food locally. Every episode, we'll explore local agriculture in a different city. We'll dive into the data and interview the leaders in that city so that you understand your place in the local food movement. I'm your host, Henry Gordon-Smith, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Jeffrey Landau. How you doing, Jeffrey?
I'm doing well, Henry. How are you? Welcome back from your first part of 40 days of agriculture. Where are you coming from?
Thank you. Yeah, I just got back from a pretty big trip. Went to Toronto for the Agri-Tech Venture Forum. Also visited some farms, including We the Roots, a really cool automated vertical farm in Toronto. Then I flew over to the Middle East, went to Dubai, had a bunch of meetings there, including a really exciting meeting with Her Excellency of the Minister of Food Security for the United Arab Emirates, which was really a great honor. And then we went over to Abu Dhabi, met with some accelerator groups there, and I also did a couple-day trip over to Oman to visit some farmers. My first time visiting Oman.
From Toronto to the UAE to Oman, I tell you, people gotta eat. So, excited to hear more about what you learned on those trips and what's to come in this episode.
So today we're going to be talking about a big food city, but maybe not the kind of food that we are trying to encourage. This is a city where there's popular products like beer and fries.
And chocolate.
And waffles. And so you may have already guessed it, but we're featuring
Brussels.
That's right, Brussels, Belgium, locally grown in, happening right now. So of course, to set up for this episode, we had to dig through some of the data, and we're going to give you some rapid fire information about the situation in Brussels. Big thanks to Brianna for setting us up with this research here. Woo, Brianna! So Jeffrey and I are actually planning a trip to Brussels. We're going next week, and that's part of 40 Days of Agriculture. We're going to be visiting a bunch of farms in Brussels and around the Belgian country. Jeffrey, what are you most excited about on that trip?
I'm excited to meet with real farmers and learn about what they're doing to promote and better urban, peri-urban agriculture in their country. Every country is different. Every city is different. So it's always interesting to hear from different perspectives on how these farmers achieve what they do through the means that they have.
Yeah, there's some really incredible technology also coming out of Brussels, or Belgium rather, with Urban Crop Solutions doing vertical farming. We've got some really cool greenhouse companies. So I'm really excited to learn about that, and we'll be doing a little bit of a debrief as part of this episode. And this is recorded before our visit, but you're going to hear some of the interviews later on this episode. So stay tuned. So now let's dive into the information on Brussels. Brussels is the capital of Belgium, and it's also the capital of the European Union. So let's talk about what makes Brussels an ideal city. First of all, that being the capital of the EU, it has a great potential to drive policy around agriculture. And one of the things we've seen recently stemming up is a lot of circular economy focus. And actually, I was approached by one of my friends who works at the German government, and they're going to be exploring a pop-up during their presidency next year, where they are featuring some integrated urban ag, mushroom production, aquaponics, basically a circular economy kind of stand at the EU, so that all the policymakers can see that and learn about it. And it's going to showcase some German tech. So really hoping agriculture can get more involved with Brussels and the EU through that process. Brussels also has a population with a very high income relative to other cities. It's well connected to Europe overall. And interestingly enough, kind of similar to the Netherlands, as you get out of the city, you start to see about 50% of the peri-urban area, right? So that area between the rural areas and the city is about agriculture. So about 50% of that's agriculture. So it actually has a lot going on that's really interesting to look through. But some of the problems that we noticed while looking through the data is that it's very reliant on chemical fertilizers. In fact, it's one of the countries that uses the most chemical fertilizers. And so there's kind of this emerging movement more towards chemical-free, organic agriculture that's on the rise. And a little bit more about food waste, right, Jeffrey?
That's right, Henry. In 2015, the Minister of Environment, Quality of Life, and Agriculture came out with some ambitious metrics to reduce the amount of food waste and increase the amount of local production within the city of Brussels. So what she noted was in 2015, about every year there was 134,000 tons of organic waste being thrown out, which is an environmental problem, an ethical problem, and an economic problem. By 2020, which is just next year, so within a 5-year target metric, Henry, they're looking to reduce that food waste number by 30%. And they're looking to increase the amount of food production in urban and peri-urban agriculture by 30% by 2035, meaning that they want Brussels residents to be eating 30% more of fruit and vegetables that are produced within the urban and peri-urban region of Brussels.
Super interesting. And I think 2015 was a real turning point. I was reading a Brussels Times 2018 article here, and it talked about how in 2015, there were about 172 new urban gardening projects that have been supported since the end of 2015. And so that's a really rapid growth in just 3 years and shows you what leadership can do. Whenever cities get behind this, it kind of brings the urban farmers out of the woodworks. There's also some programs for urban farmers to get grants, about 3,000 euros to get started, up to 5 per year, according to this article. And overall, there were about 30 professional agriculture projects in the region in 2018, almost twice the number of 2015. So we're seeing not only urban gardens, community gardens, but also for-profit farms emerging there. And in this episode of Locally Grown In, we're going to be digging deep into these projects by speaking to some of the farmers. And we'll do a little bit of debrief to give you the key takeaways, which is what we do at every episode. But my hypothesis so far for Brussels is that it's going to be all about organic. That's going to be really attractive to the high wealth individuals in Brussels and attracting those customers. Circular economy focused, any kind of farms that can demonstrate that they're reducing waste and using the circular economy. And probably a big focus on case studies and examples that can be taken throughout the EU. But time will tell as we go through all these various interviews and go through our visit to Brussels. So I'm here now with Nele, and Nele is the leader of urban agriculture for the Flanders Farming Association, which works to really educate and connect different farmers with best practices, innovations, technologies. And actually last night we spoke to some of them, or the night before we spoke to some of them about urban agriculture and vertical farming. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. We've had a lot of busy tours on this trip, thanks to you.
You're welcome. It was really fun.
So tell us more about the mission of the Flanders Farming Association.
Well, what I have to do is learn what is happening. All those new entrepreneurs, mostly in a rural environment, who are or in an urban environment, who are planning to produce food and have an income from that. So that's very adventurous. We know that as a farmer association. So we are there to bring our knowledge to those new entrepreneurs, because there is already a lot of expertise, but sometimes we feel maybe we have a different kind of language. And actually, if we cross that barrier, we actually can give a lot of information that is already there and get them started.
And we spoke a lot about kind of the rural-urban divide, how different it can be, agriculture, problems, scale, policy, everything. You know, what's your vision for those two groups working together, and why is it important?
I think it's very interesting. From as an outsider, you might think those are two very different groups, but the challenges they face are quite similar. I also feel the same passion about food, so that is also very similar. They have, like I said, a different language, but if we see all through that, they can learn a lot from each other. So the urban farmers, they bring into the agriculture new talents, new ideas, new ways of looking at something we might think it's all normal. They look in a really specific way. They try to produce circular, what is not really absent in the rural farming, but we don't see it's like something new. So we can learn from how the newcomers are looking to agriculture, and at the other side, it's interesting to see how much knowledge there is in growing foods. It's called like tacit knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that word.
Yeah.
Because we are mostly not aware of it, but everybody who starts growing food experience that it's not that easy. It's not like installing an app and then growing tomatoes like it's nothing. And I think it's a good thing because we need more farmers in agriculture, new farmers, existing farmers, daughters, sons of farmers, everyone with an open view. So the respect for producing food can augment, and that will that is good for everyone.
The vast majority of the farmers, even the urban farmers here, are men, white men. So talk about this issue. You know, why if there's so much innovation happening in the urban area with these urban farmers, why don't we see that happening with diversity? What's your theory about the reasons for that?
That's a really good question. I think it's difficult to say, because if you look like to university, like bioengineers, there's a lot of women there. Aren't they too adventurous? I don't know, but sometimes we might push them more and encourage each other. Like, you're really doing that good. It's not perfect, but who is? So just do it. Don't be afraid. So I think, while thinking about that, because we saw it the last days, I want to make a project out of it. Maybe together with Sabine from Roo Foods, and think how can we augment the female entrepreneurship.
Mentoring each other and giving these examples of female entrepreneurs. Because when you see someone like yourself, whether it's your color or your sex, you believe you could do that. And I think that's what's needed here. And it's a bit of a cycle, right? Because the men typically get the investment easier because the investors are male.
Men, yes.
And so there needs to be really a lot of collaboration to break that system down. And I think this is not only a Belgian problem, this is a global problem. But the irony is that globally, more women are involved in agriculture to provide the food supply overall. And
That's
so
it. So why it's not over here? What I do see is in rural areas, when farms start to engage people into the farm, like giving tours to school children, or having people with disabilities, or organizing a direct-to-consumer selling. It's not only women, but the majority is the woman on the farm
doing
who
the
is
social
engaging
ones,
in
and
that.
the tours and the openness.
So who knows if urban agriculture is more mature, then women will pop up and also make that connection. And yeah, it's an interesting topic.
I think it will change, but
Yeah.
we will have to make it change.
Yeah.
We'll have to help work on it. So we talked a lot about Belgian farmers' resistance to innovation and technology, right? They want to watch what maybe the Dutch do or other countries do first, and then they say, okay, we can try it. And we were learning about some innovations at the conference you organized. We learned about robots that deliver UV light to help stem off pests and diseases in strawberries, that pick strawberries. We learned about data and being able to use big data to predict yields. We also learned about different sensors and different substrates. And so these are innovative technologies, and there seems to be some resistance to try them. Well, what is that? What's behind that? What's the cultural issue behind that?
Act normal. Don't be crazy. That's maybe something we learned from being little.
Like not showing off, or maybe just like what is the
just
risk?
work and don't talk too much.
Perfect podcast guests, Belgians.
And it's good, of course. You have to work hard.
Yeah, it's good
because at the end, farming is a tough profession. So if you talk all the time, you can't work. But you need some part of your time to dream, to talk, to go out. And maybe we developed, or we went too long in one particular direction.
Yeah.
And that is interesting to see the new farmers bringing in a new dynamic. And that's, I think, is interesting to look at. It's not the enemy, because some farmers might think, they will produce the thing or that will
compete with
they
us.
will compete with us, but I don't see the competition at this moment. It's rather they should look at it as what are they doing, how are they selling it, what are they saying they are doing. But most farmers will say, but we are doing the same.
Yeah, why?
But then I say to them, just also say it.
Yeah,
Sell
market
that. And
Yeah.
because we learned also selling foods only as foods, if you combine that with emotion and a story, and that sounds really pathetic a bit for hardcore farmers, like all the talking, it's just food. No, they feel the passion, but when the food goes off the farm, they keep the passion, the farmers. So they should sell it together with the product.
But I think this is a really important point, and this is a result of the transition of the agricultural system. And what we did is we started to grow product for the cheapest possible product, and we lost the authenticity in the product, the connection with the food.
Yeah.
And so you go to the supermarket and you shop, and then people started to get scared and realize, is it safe? Is it good for me? Is it healthy? Why doesn't it taste good? Where does it come from? And now there's a new demand for authenticity and story, and that's why that brand matters so much. And urban farmers can do that. But you're right, rural farmers can learn from that.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting when the rural farmers are resistant to innovation and the urban farmers embrace it like crazy. It's their success.
It's
The beginning
it's
is
why they are
innovative.
doing it.
Yeah, it's why they are doing it. So there's a lot to learn there, more
Yes.
to learn than
Yeah.
to be scared of.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to say to the rural farmers, just do what the new farmers are doing. No, just learn from it and think about it.
Yeah.
What can you do with that in your own business? Because, of course, you're not starting from scratch, and that's also a fact.
And
so
an
you have
advantage,
your
possibly,
something built up multiple generations. So I'm aware you can change that, and you shouldn't. You're good, you have your talents, but look at what's happening. And some are doing it, of course, and we're there to encourage them because they're anyway out of their comfort zone. So we are there to support them and say, just try. It's uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
But do it.
That's how we grow, yeah. And you're
Step
right,
by step.
observe and then do your own response
do
to
it.
that. So I was very impressed by the quality of the product in a lot of the farms, urban or rural. I was impressed by how clean a lot of the farms were.
Yes.
You know, is this also a cultural thing as a result of being safe and just focusing on the work? Do you think this is a Belgian thing and maybe what makes Belgium a great agriculture country?
Hard workers.
Hard workers.
Yes. We
Yeah.
don't talk too much. No, but that's it. We just work hard. We are proud of if farmers go into a store, let's say producers of vegetables, they go to the women often. I have to be honest, it's like that. They go to the vegetables and look what is the quality. So and they are really hurt if the quality is bad. It's like an offense to them because they work every day very hard to have like the top quality. And that's really in our DNA.
So we visited kind of the Tivoli Green City, which is this new development here. We saw Sky Farms has a new rooftop greenhouse there and a little shop for consumers to learn about gardening. What's the trend around architecture and urban planning and agriculture in Brussels? Is it a leader? Is it just getting started? What's your take on that?
I think the government is already on a really good track. They are pushing the ideas also to project developers and construction companies. I don't know for sure if the second group is already really into it. They are also hard workers, but the architects do, and it's moving. But it's really exceptional what we see in Brussels. Especially we know Flanders really good, and we think Ghent, and they have a really good policy. But if you look to what's happening in Brussels,
it's very fast too.
The policy is really, and what I like here is it's really open-minded. They look to the urban farmers and they also say to the rural farmers, you need to be part of this. We want to do it together with you. And I think that is a very important...
That's unique too. Not
Yes.
many cities are doing that.
No.
They're not creating that collaboration.
That's
Yeah.
it. So I'm really happy with that.
So we visited like 5 urban farms today,
Mhm.
maybe 4 farms yesterday,
Mhm.
3 the day before. You know, what are some of the things, maybe the top things that you learned from this past few days?
It was fun. It was busy, but it's nice to have fun during your job.
Yeah.
It was, well, you learn because you see a lot of different companies in a very short time. And that's really interesting. I learned that we are Belgium, and that means that if we're in Brussels, we know the Flemish projects very well, we know some French, but even though they are next to each other, they don't know each other very well because they are French or Dutch speaking, and that's very Belgian.
That's an opportunity too.
Yes,
Another
but
one.
I feel that is one of the topics we will really focus on, and to exchange ideas between both communities and then extend it also to the rural farmers. So this will be great. You should come back again in some...
Anytime I'm happy to come back. So could you introduce yourself, say your name and what you do?
Yes, I'm Stefaan Kint. I work for the Flemish government, and I'm responsible for all cultures and enclosed environments. So greenhouses, mushrooms, and endive.
And endives
Yes.
grown indoors.
Yes.
And so we're here right now next to one of the big greenhouse growers. Could you tell us a little bit about the greenhouse industry in Flanders?
Oh, it's about 2,000 hectares. That's the surface in total. Most of it is vegetables. You have also some ornamentals in greenhouses. Tomatoes and concerning vegetables are about 500 hectares. So 1/4 is tomatoes. Then you have, I have the figures, I can show you them. Like Nele said, you have some growing in soil, still in soil, but a big part is soilless nowadays. Yes.
Is soilless greenhouse culture, is it becoming more popular?
It's augmenting, yes, because of pathogens in the soil. So you have to choose. There's the solutions by chemical means diminish, so they have to look for other opportunities. We had tomatoes, cucumber, and so on, soilless. Recently, we see also lettuce be grown soilless. That is augmenting. We have now about, I think, 20 hectares, 25 hectares lettuce soilless. And I think we export our knowledge all over the world. So, yes.
And mushroom production, can you tell me a little bit about mushroom production here? How is it typically done and what scale?
That's more difficult. We have not a lot of growers anymore. It diminishes. We have a lot of competition from Poland, for example.
Oh, really?
But I think we have in total 30 growers still about. It's not so easy to give you figures about that. The big disadvantage for our region is labor costs. It's very labor intensive, and in Poland they have better wages, lower
cost wages.
Yes, so they have an economic advantage to our region.
And, you know, when we look globally, especially in developed countries, there's a decline of young farmers, right? Young people getting into agriculture. Obviously, you know, with the economics being challenging as well, that can prevent young people from going into it. Also, they want to live in the city. What are you seeing here in Flanders or in Belgium as in regards to young people getting involved in operating new farms?
We see the same problem as everywhere, I think. Every year we have a loss of 3% about in normal periods of growers. And we have new growers, but not enough to compensate the loss of growers. And you see also that we have less growers, but bigger farms. So
Consolidation of the farms.
Yes.
So Nele was telling us a little bit about the greenhouse crisis or the vegetable crisis that happened maybe 8 years ago. Could you tell us about what happened?
Oh, yeah. It's as Ehek Nele told about. So it was a crisis, but there was a problem with food safety, with a batch of no one did for sure what was the exact reason. That was the biggest problem, I think. So they thought it was in Germany that it occurred. So in Germany they couldn't find the cause immediately. So they think it's that culture. No, they didn't know sure. But every time they said something, the prices of that vegetable dropped because people were afraid that they could get sick of or even die from eating it. So the big problem was that they couldn't trace fast enough the source of the problem. That was the biggest crisis. Because EHEC was a simple problem of food safety and a bad system of traceability.
So what's being done now to improve consumer trust and traceability in the market?
In Belgium, we have already a long history of very good traceability. We had other crises before, so we have the Federal Food Agency, FAVV, and they have implemented a very strict strategy for traceability. And we have in Belgium, for vegetables especially, we have auctions, producers organizations, and they implement from farmer over the auction producer organization to the buyers a very strict system of traceability. So I think that the problem with EHEC was not I think in our system of traceability. It was more in Germany that their system was not completely traceable, I think, and that was the problem we had at that time.
Is blockchain being discussed as a solution to this traceability, or is it more old-fashioned approach?
It is mentioned. I have to be honest, I don't know enough all the possibilities of blockchain, but I hear it often being mentioned. But I think a lot of players in the food chain are interested, but no one knows for the moment, I think, how to start to implement it. I think there has to be more study. Yes.
So you represent Flanders, and I think you said about 80% of the greenhouses are based in Flanders. Could you?
No,
98% of the greenhouses are based in Flanders. So could you tell us a little bit about, briefly the geography of Belgium and where Flanders is and what makes Flanders unique?
Flanders is near the sea. That's an advantage. We have a moderate climate, so that's useful for vegetable growing and for greenhouse growing. Normally we have enough water. We have some dry years, so that's not every year like that anymore. So we feel a little bit climate change with drier summers. One of the big advantages always mentioned is also we have a lot of clients with enough money to buy good quality products. So that is locally. Locally.
Understanding your market and your customers is one of the first steps you're going to make when you start your urban farming business. And next, we're going to hear from two aspiring entrepreneurs in Brussels, Belgium. Please welcome Urban Harvest.
So first of all, it's great to see you guys. I got to see your farm today, Urban Harvest. Can you introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do at the company?
Definitely. Yeah, sure. Definitely. Maybe I'll start. So I'm Olivier. I'm one of the co-founders of Urban Harvest. Let's say that I have an engineering background and I met my business partner Alexander in business school. And afterwards, I first did a good 3 years in sales. And then I got this call, do you want to become a farmer? And well, the rest is becoming history. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Well, so I'm Alexander. I'm a law graduate. Met Olivier in business school, worked afterwards in supply chain and treasury. And then at a certain moment, got bored, started reading about vertical farming, found, there might be something in that, especially if you see the farms in Japan getting like crazy. And I said, Olivier should join this journey. So I called him, convinced him over lunch, and then, our journey started.
So let me get this straight. You have a law degree,
Yeah.
you have an engineering degree, and you both have business degrees.
Yes.
And you chose to be vertical farmers.
Yes.
So crazy guys.
Yes.
So you must have seen some of the videos or pictures of plant factories in Japan online. What about that got you excited?
Well, just the fact, not only just growing herbs inside, but also the fact that those countries really started relying on that type of technology just to make sure that they are not dependent anymore of other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're saying, our food is sourced from everywhere in the world and we don't have any control about that. And especially after that, if you start looking at everything which is going on in the world, climate change and whatsoever, I felt, this might be something to go into that.
And for me, it was just like an invite to a challenging business because you see a lot of these vertical farms that are not going the way they should go. A lot of them go bankrupt. You hear a lot of wild stories. So it was just can we hack something? Can we find a way around it, find a way to make it profitable, to make it sustainable? And that was for me the signal to give it a go and then start working on our farm, on our concept.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what you're doing engineering-wise and how you're working to be profitable. But first, tell us a little bit about the business itself. What is Urban Harvest? What does Urban Harvest do?
Okay. Do I do it?
Yeah, feel free, go.
Okay, so maybe a step backward. We looked at vertical farming. You get the machine builders, and yet you get the farms that started building their own farm and operated themselves. We did some due diligence of multiple companies. They have good technology, but they didn't have the market feeling that we also were looking for. So at a certain moment, we decided, let's give it a shot. Let's build it ourselves, not just to become machine builders, but really to feel, the technology is used for a certain purpose, which is growing those crops that we want to sell to supermarkets. We did it. We came up with a small box where we started growing vertically, even though we could put it everywhere in the world. It was, it's even half the size, more or less. Looked at it, do we like it? Yes. Can we grow crops? Yes. Are people buying our crops? Triple yes. Went forward it and then started thinking, where are we going to go with this, let's say it's small startup, POC, and then really found the investors, started thinking about it, and really came up, the machines, it's good to have them, but in the end, consumers, they don't care if the crops are grown vertically, underground, diagonally, whatsoever. What they want is to have local produce and sustainable production.
So what's the size of your current facility?
Today, I think we're roughly installed at around 500 square meters. But by the end of the year, we'll go times 4 at least. And the reason we do that is that with every iteration, we can create a new design iteration as well. So it gives us the flexibility we need.
We need to improve the system.
Yeah, we need, because we keep on improving it. There's definitely a lot of points where we need to improve as any kind of business. And that's a short-term plan. Let's say we can already talk about our midterm plan. There we see we have a lot of possibilities to grow faster, but the short term is just get to these 2,000 square meters, like at least by the end of the year.
Oliver, you were a mechanic, or you were working on with cars, right? And so this kind of stems some of the curiosity you had to start hacking the typical vertical farming approach. And we know that the equipment for vertical farming and greenhouses can be very expensive, especially if you're going small scale. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things, not the specifics, but some of the parts of the farm that you thought were the most expensive and that you wanted to change, and a little bit of how you started to do this?
Yeah, sure. So as Alexandre just said, we did a bit of a due diligence on the current machine builders that were on the market. There was both the vertical farm machine builders, but also the traditional greenhouse suppliers. And the most expensive part that we saw was the equipment to add the nutrients and to mix the nutrients with the water. Let's say the whole water management system. They were always sold as a packaged solution, including systems to open the windows, to close curtains, to have gas furnace for the CO2. All of things we don't need, and they come with the sales pitch. Yeah, but you can use this for a farm of 10,000 to 100,000 square meters, and as the smallest unit, we're like, even the biggest vertical farm in the world can actually not use 100% of the capabilities. And then we just broke it down. We said, okay, what do we need to do? We need to have some pumps go on and off, and we need to measure the EC and pH of the water to see what's in the water, and make adjustments for the plants. And that, to be honest, is a very basic system. So we just went and looked on the market for the best component suppliers, and that is what we, of course, assembled all these pieces together, created a program to have everything also on software in the cloud, to have just the data. Because that is important for us, I think, is the data we collect. Today it's easy, so just use it. That was R&D. So that's on the water management side, a big part. And the other part is the lights. We hear a lot of wild stories about LEDs, the most expensive ones being amazing, the cheap ones really being rubbish. But for us, having no insights in that market, we just went out and we talked to 10, even 20 suppliers from the expensive ones to the cheap ones. And we just put them all together in the small rack we had. Because for us, the only thing that was important for us was the quality of the crop that came out of it. We were not looking for a specific crop quality. We just wanted to be able to sell them. And there we just saw that we found a specific supplier with a good price quality ratio, and we just went for that one. So it's, again, plain simple. Just take time. Don't listen to all the stories, and find a good relationship with the supplier as well.
So in the United States, vertical farms are typically big farms in a box, or even small farms in a box. And they're not really connected to the buildings around them or the environment around them. In contrast, here in Brussels, there's so much emphasis on the circular economy. But with vertical farming, sometimes that can be one of the most challenging ways to do it, right? So how are you integrating the circular economy into your project? What is the beginning of your journey of exploring the circular economy and your vertical farm?
Yeah. I think when you want to start talking about circularity, you need to get a very clear mapping of all your inputs and outputs and all the, let's say, products in between. And then to see, okay, where can we look back, circle back, and is it internal or external? Yeah. Because for us, circularity doesn't need to be in the company itself, because some waste products, it would be stupid for us to process or use them. But maybe there's a partner that you can, instead of just throwing your waste away, that can reuse it. So that's, for us, should be the easiest part, is to look on the external side. So from who are we buying, what are they doing with their produce, and also the potential small waste we have, how can it be reused? The other aspect is energy consumption. Vertical farms use quite a lot of electricity. They have a lot of byproducts. When you look at the energy side, you generate a lot of heat. So there we talk actually with the facility managers on site to see how can these things be optimized. So how can the heat be reused, and how can we make sure that the electricity we use is consumed at the right moment of the day, and is it coming from a sustainable source or not? So that's the things we are looking at, the low entry stuff, but that have a big impact.
You're also capturing rainwater, right?
And indeed, the water is coming from the roof. We filter it totally, and we try to reuse it as much as possible.
Businesses like these are supporting Brussels in achieving its goals for the good food policy. Next, we're going to hear from an urban farming renaissance man on the various jobs and work he's done in supporting Brussels through urban beekeeping, through policy, and through urban farming.
So we're here with Alex, who's been showing us around urban farms in Brussels. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I'm doing a lot about environment and especially about urban farming. I did different jobs in urban farming, like in association, in university, in business that's doing consulting for big projects, small project, medium project.
Yeah, you're a bit of a renaissance man, as we say in English. You're doing many different kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
We visited your beekeeping farm that you have on your rooftop.
Yeah.
You're also involved in consulting, as you said, but you've been involved in policy. Can you tell us a little bit about the good food policy? We talked about it a little bit earlier in this episode, but how did it begin and what was your involvement in it?
Yeah. In Belgium, we have a minister that called Céline Frémaux, it's her name, and she wants to build a strategy to get a better food, good food, good for the people and good for the environment. And the purpose is to grow in the city of Brussels and around the city, like 10 kilometers around, 30% of all vegetables that the citizen buy every year.
Is there a deadline for the goal?
The deadline, it's I think 2030 or 2035. I have to check.
Yeah, but coming up
it's
soon.
It's close, yeah, it's soon. And the target, it's not optimistic because you just need maybe 300 hectares.
300 hectares to achieve the goal.
Yes, I think for the main vegetables like tomatoes, lettuce, and fruits like apple, onion, etc.
Did you look at the potential? Did you look at the available spaces and the potential? Is there enough space to achieve this goal?
Yes, there are enough fields. Only in Brussels, we have 250 hectares available.
Wow.
But for now, we're growing food for cows and for us, and not so much for vegetables.
And, we look at Paris a lot and the Pariculture competition as a leader in policy. But when we were speaking earlier, you were saying that you think Brussels is even more of a leader. There's more urban farming happening. Can you tell us about that and why you think that?
Yes. I know very well Paris, and Paris is a city with not so much lost space.
Yeah.
And in Brussels, we have more space on the ground for the fields, but also on the rooftop. Not like Paris, because the rooftop of Paris is not flat. And we have also many places on the ground. And it's why many different projects born in Brussels, like Little Food is the first business commercial project for growing insects in Europe to the human consumption. And there are the leaders in the market in Europe. You have two very big companies that's growing mushrooms. It's not just a game or a small scale. It's medium scale. It's not industrial, but it's something coming big. We have the biggest aquaponic farm on a rooftop here in Brussels, and we have many small scales urban farming projects on the fields.
So one of the things that I noticed while I was here on this trip and this tour, you arranged a lot of tours, thank you for that, is there's a lot of focus on circular economy, managing waste properly, also reducing the single-use plastic, also capturing rainwater, partnerships between farms to share inputs and outputs. Could you tell us why is that such a big thing here in Brussels?
It's because of the policy. Brussels chose to develop very fast is circular economy, and they put a lot of money on the table for all the business that can make circular economy.
So it's quite difficult for a farm, an urban farm, when it's trying to make money, it's trying to keep its operations, to also pursue circular economy. So I know they're doing it to respond to this policy, maybe get incentives, but does it make their life easier or harder? What is your belief about this for an urban farmer?
It's easier because circular economy help urban farmers to tell a story, you know? I don't think all the projects that we visit today are truly circular.
No, they're starting and...
It's always a part.
Yeah.
Like Champignons de Bruxelles, doing tests with trash from brewers, but all the mushrooms don't use trash, you know?
A percentage on
yes.
it, yeah. Do you think the consumer cares about that story? Do you think they care about if it's grown in a circular economy method or just urban or local? What do you think consumers here care about?
The local is the most important, certainly. After that, we have the way to grow. If it's organic, it's very important for many consumers. And after that, the story. If you grow mushrooms in a basement, a simple basement, or a parking, for example, it's not a good story like if you grow mushrooms in the basement of a famous place in Brussels, like Tour et Taxi for permafungi, and like Les Caves de Kuregem for Champignons de Bruxelles. It's a very famous place where...
so the consumer appreciates this location and the kind of vision of the city maybe that they want to have?
Yeah.
So if you're an entrepreneur, you're talking to an entrepreneur and they're thinking about urban farming, what do you think are some of the most important questions they should ask themselves?
I think...
Is it investment? Is it technology?
It's not the money, it's not the place, it's the people. If you have the good people, you can do a lot without money, without a very good place. But if you have a lot of money, a very good place, and you don't find the good people, you can waste a lot of money and a lot of time. And it's also why it's not a bad idea to tell agriculture or to tell to me to have some advice to help them to start in the good way. Because if you start a project of agriculture in the city or outside the city without knowledge, it's always a mess, you know?
Thank you, everyone, for listening to today's episode of Locally Grown In featuring Brussels.
Yeah, and there's much more content on agritecture.com, our blog. If you're an Instagrammer, you can follow us at Agritecture, and you can follow our stories as we travel around the world featuring different urban farms.
As always, please like, subscribe, leave a review. Let us know what you think. It's important for us to make sure that you get something out of our story and our journey. We're doing this together. We're trying to grow an industry. We're trying to learn together and grow together. And the puns won't stop around ag or food, and we hope you won't stop listening. See you next time.